Desire in its raw form is not the goal itself, but rather a cipher, a living symbol that points toward the deeper architecture of the psyche. What is often mistaken for the object of longing is in truth only the outer garment of an inner necessity. Man does not simply want, he is summoned by his wanting. The things he chases are not ends in themselves. They are masks, projections, and shadows of forgotten parts of the self. When a man speaks of desire, particularly of sexual longing, he believes he is describing something concrete. But what he truly pursues is often unconscious, a veiled archetype, a hidden meaning, a lost part of his inner kingdom. What appears to be hunger for the flesh is frequently the psyche's attempt to express something wordless, the longing for transcendence, the ache for union with the missing part of himself. In this sense, desire is not merely a physiological impulse, it is symbolic language. It arises from the soul's effort to push into consciousness what has long remained buried. The woman, the touch, the thrill, these are not the treasure but the map. And the man who confuses the map for the treasure finds only repetition, not fulfillment. Thus desire is the flame, but not the hearth. It signals that something within is stirring, something ancient, something holy, something lost. If followed blindly, desire leads to addiction and emptiness. But if decoded, if seen as symbol rather than object, it reveals the secret architecture of the self. It reveals what the conscious mind has forgotten, but the unconscious has never ceased to remember. Sex, in the psyche of man, is seldom about sex alone. It is the visible crest of a wave whose depths are filled with ancient currents. What stirs within him at the sight of beauty, at the touch of skin, at the thrill of pursuit, is not simply animal instinct. It is the awakening of a longing that no body can fully satisfy. The erotic impulse is real, but it is often a disguise worn by a much older yearning, one that emerges not from the loins, but from the soul. What man truly seeks, though he may not name it, is to feel whole again. He is haunted by the dim memory of a time before division, before the self fractured into opposites, before the masculine and the feminine were torn apart. The sexual act promises, for a fleeting moment, a return to that undivided state. It suggests reunion. It whispers of transcendence. But it is only a shadow of the reunion the soul craves. This is why the fulfillment of sexual desire can leave a man emptier than before. He touches the body but not the essence. He enters the flesh but remains exiled from the sacred. He achieves climax but not communion. What he truly longs for cannot be reached through sensation alone. The body may burn, but the soul remains cold if the act is stripped of meaning. Sex, then, is a ritual, and like any ritual, it becomes hollow if the symbols are not understood. The deeper hunger is not for the woman's body, but for what she represents in the symbolic order, the path to the inner feminine, the key to inner integration, the gate to the divine. She is not the destination, but the threshold. The desire that draws him toward her is not merely biological. It is mythic. It is the echo of a forgotten language, a call from the depths reminding him that he is not yet whole. Desire, as it arises within the male psyche, is rarely what it claims to be. It does not speak plainly. It comes draped in image, emotion, tension, disguised as longing for the outer world, when in truth it emerges from the hidden chambers within. The object of desire, the woman, the experience, the sensation, is a mask, a symbol. It is not the source but the projection of something unseen, something far older and far more sacred than the conscious mind can immediately grasp. The man who says, "I want her," is, more truthfully, saying, "I have lost something," though he does not know what. His desire is a compass spinning toward a magnetic field he cannot name. He chases forms, thinking they will resolve the tension within. But these forms are mirrors, not destinations. What he pursues externally is the reflection of something internally disowned. Desire, then, is not an endpoint to be reached, but a mythic message from the unconscious. It is the soul's metaphorical language, rising to the surface in images the ego can interpret, though often wrongly. The yearning is real, the hunger undeniable, but it is not for what it appears to be. It is for what the image conceals, the union of opposites, the recovery of the lost self, the reconciliation of the fragmented inner world, and this is why desire intensifies the more it is misunderstood. The more a man believes the outer form will bring him peace, the further he drifts from the inner source that calls to him. He multiplies experiences, lovers, indulgences, yet remains spiritually malnourished. Because what he seeks cannot be consumed, it must be integrated. It must be seen for what it is, not a craving for possession, but a symbol of something waiting to be awakened within him. Sex is the most immediate expression of desire, but also the most misleading. It is primal, urgent, and tangible, yet it conceals more than it reveals. What appears as physical longing is often the external veil of a metaphysical hunger. The body becomes the theater for a drama that originates in the depths of the psyche. The act itself is charged with intensity, but the meaning behind the act, that is where the true mystery lies. For many men, the drive towards sex is not purely about the body or pleasure, but about affirmation, not merely of masculinity, but of existence itself. There is a silent question beneath the urge, do I matter? Am I real? Am I seen? The sexual encounter, then, becomes a ritualistic attempt to escape alienation, to dissolve the boundaries of the isolated self, and even if only for a moment touch something beyond thought, to be held by something eternal. But sex, stripped of soul, collapses into repetition. The man returns again and again, not out of abundance but from an unrecognized emptiness. The act becomes compulsive, not because it fails to satisfy the body, but because it fails to reach what lies beneath, the psychic hunger for contact with the sacred feminine, with the numinous, with the part of himself he has forgotten. The body of the woman becomes a symbol, not of lust but of return, of wholeness, of home. This is why sexual longing often carries with it a sense of sadness even after fulfillment. There is a recognition, however faint, that what was touched was only a shadow of what was truly desired. The man is not only seeking pleasure, he is seeking to remember, to re-enter a state of being that was lost before he could name it, to break through the loneliness that no number of bodies can resolve, to touch what lies behind the veil of form. Within every man lives a presence he rarely understands and often fears, the inner feminine, the unseen counterpart to his outward strength and reason. She moves in dreams, whispers in intuitions, stirs in moments of tenderness or longing, yet remains unnamed in the language of his daily life. He seeks her externally, projects her onto women, chases her in idealized forms, but seldom recognizes that what he is drawn to in the other is a reflection of what remains unlived within himself. This forgotten feminine is not weakness, softness, or passivity, as the world has wrongly taught him to believe. She is mystery, creativity, emotion, feeling. She is the soul's voice. She holds the key to empathy, to vulnerability, to relational depth, to the capacity to feel life rather than merely control it. But because she has been exiled from his conscious identity, her absence hollows him from within. And so he reaches outward, mistaking romantic or sexual desire for connection, when what he truly desires is to recover this disowned part of his own being. The women he is drawn to are not merely individuals. They are symbols, containers for the qualities he has not yet accepted within himself. Their beauty, their intensity, their unpredictability, these fascinate and disturb him because they mirror the wild, sacred aspects of his own psyche that he has tried to tame or suppress. In pursuit of her, he may become addicted to the chase, intoxicated by love or paralyzed by rejection, but all these experiences serve one function: to reveal the split within. To encounter the inner feminine is to enter unfamiliar territory. Logic begins to lose its grip. Certainty dissolves. The mind, so accustomed to conquest and clarity, must learn to surrender to ambiguity, emotion, and receptivity. This is not a descent into irrationality, but a deepening into life's full range, the acceptance that not all can be solved, fixed, or won. Through her, he is invited to feel, to create, to suffer, to listen, to be transformed from within rather than elevated from without. The masculine, in its ideal form, is not domination but presence, not control, but conscious direction. Yet in the psyche of the modern man, the masculine is often fractured, distorted by centuries of collective forgetting. What rises to the surface in his compulsions, his aggression, his obsession with sexual conquest, gears not authentic masculinity, but its shadow, the repressed, denied, and unconscious forces that have been exiled from the light of awareness. The shadow of masculinity does not appear as evil, but as excess. It is not the sword itself, but the hand that cannot stop swinging it. The man who is possessed by this shadow becomes fixated on proving, conquering, asserting. He sees the world as a battlefield where love becomes a transaction and sex a tool to assert dominance. But beneath this posturing lies fear, the fear of inadequacy, of emotional exposure, of encountering his own vulnerability. The shadow grows in the places where softness was once punished, where emotion was shamed, where doubt was equated with weakness. Unintegrated, the shadow becomes projected. The man begins to see threats where there are none, competitors in every brother and objects in every woman. His hunger is insatiable not because he is powerful, but because he is cut off from the true source of his strength, the union of conscious intention with unconscious wisdom. The more he denies his inner wounds, the more he tries to mask them with outer performance. Sexual dominance, emotional withdrawal, and emotional superiority become the language of a man at war with himself. Yet the shadow is not the enemy. It is the guardian of transformation. It contains the very energies he needs to evolve. His instinct, his fire, his raw vitality, but in distorted form. Until he brings this shadow into awareness, until he faces the part of himself he most fears, he will remain split, projecting onto the world what he cannot yet face within. He will confuse power with hardness and mistake intimacy for threat, all the while wondering why his victories feel hollow and why his desires never rest. Beneath the surface of male desire lies a more ancient yearning, one that predates sexuality, ambition, and even identity. It is the ache for the eternal mother, the archetypal source from which all life flows and to which all things long to return. This longing is not directed toward the literal mother, but toward the universal image she represents, the womb of safety, the ground of being, the all-encompassing presence that holds without judgment and gives without condition. In the arms of this great mother, the ego dissolves its defenses. The masculine self, so conditioned to strive, to prove, to separate, remembers for a moment the feeling of being whole without effort. This is the deep pull beneath the erotic, not simply to merge with another, but to be received, to rest, to be held in a space where nothing must be earned and nothing feared. The man who seeks this return may not understand his own hunger. He may pursue woman after woman, experience after experience, but what he chases is not a person. It is a feeling, a lost state of consciousness that cannot be satisfied by the body alone. This yearning for the archetypal feminine often shows itself in paradoxical ways. It may emerge as obsession, as idealization, as helpless romanticism. The man places the woman on a pedestal, not because of who she is, but because of what she unconsciously evokes in him. The image of the great nurturer, the healer of all wounds, the one who can absolve his hidden shame and loneliness. But no individual can carry such a projection without breaking under its weight. What he truly longs for must be found inwardly, in his reconnection with the feminine ground of his own soul. The ache for the eternal mother is not weakness, nor regression. It is the deep psychic call to return to origin, to reconnect with the principle of life that nourishes, renews, and restores. In a world that praises the masculine will to power, this softer, more ancient pull is often repressed or misunderstood. Yet it continues to stir in the background of desire, shaping the man's relationships, his art, his dreams, and his suffering. It is the original desire, not for possession, not even for union with the other, but for reconnection with the source from which he came, and from which he has become inwardly exiled. What the masculine often mistakes for desire is not a craving for possession, but a forgotten longing for union. The impulse to own, to conquer, to make the other his, is a distortion of a deeper truth, that he does not truly wish to take, but to merge. The desire is not to dominate the other, but to dissolve the walls of separation, to experience something beyond the confines of his isolated self. In his pursuit of the woman, he believes he seeks her, but in truth, he seeks a state of being that she awakens in him, a return to totality. Possession is the language of fear, fear of losing, fear of vulnerability, fear of being incomplete. It reduces the other to an object, a prize, a mirror of one's own lack. But union is the language of the soul. It requires surrender, not control. The man who moves from a place of authentic desire is not attempting to acquire the other, but to meet her, to stand before her not as a master, but as a presence, fully seen and seeing. In such an encounter, both individuals are transformed, because neither remains fixed in their identity. Each becomes a vessel through which something larger moves. The craving to possess is born from the ego's illusion of separateness. It clings, grasps, and consumes because it fears the void. But the longing for union arises from the deeper self, the part of the psyche that remembers wholeness. This kind of desire is sacred, not in the moral sense but in the archetypal sense. It is the sacred tension between opposites, the alchemical heat that dissolves boundaries and births something new. In union, the man does not lose himself but is expanded. He does not own the other but is opened by her. This kind of merging does not happen through the act alone but through presence, through attunement to the symbolic meaning of the encounter. The physical moment becomes a gateway, a ritual, a threshold between the known and the unknown. The other is no longer a body to be consumed, but a soul to be met. And in that meeting, the man catches a glimpse of something he has been seeking all along, not the fulfillment of a fantasy, but the remembrance of a deeper unity that was never truly lost, only hidden beneath the layers of fear, pride, and projection. Desire, when stripped of its disguises, is not merely a signal of physical hunger or emotional loneliness. It is often the call of the soul, cloaked in earthly images, reaching toward consciousness through the language of longing. The figures that stir passion within a man, the faces he cannot forget, the voices that echo in his memory, the eyes that seem to see into him, are not accidents of attraction, but messengers. They are symbols sent from the depths, charged with psychic meaning, asking not to be possessed but to be understood. The soul does not speak in concepts or logic. It speaks in symbols, in feelings, in synchronicities that disturb the rational order of the ego. When a woman captivates a man beyond reason, when her presence stirs both desire and dread, it is not merely chemistry at play, but the emergence of the unconscious into waking life. Something in her activates a part of him that has been dormant, hidden, or denied. She becomes the vessel through which the soul attempts to awaken him, not to her but to himself. This is why some desires feel fated, inexplicable, and irrational. They arrive not to grant pleasure, but to initiate transformation. The soul does not care for comfort. It seeks wholeness. It will disturb peace, rupture stability, even upend identity, in order to bring forgotten aspects of the self into the light. What seems like external infatuation is often internal revelation, the surfacing of an unlived image, a repressed longing, a disowned truth. In these moments, desire becomes a mirror. The man is not merely drawn to the outer other, but to the reflection of his own undeveloped potential. Her mystery is his mystery, her depth his own undiscovered inner terrain. The longing is not to merge with her alone, but to awaken the part of himself that recognizes her, the part that has been waiting silently for the permission to exist. The soul uses her as a symbol to deliver its message, knowing that only in the language of desire will the ego listen closely enough to hear. Relationships, especially those charged with passion and longing, are not merely arenas for gratification or comfort. They are profound stages of initiation, crucibles in which the unfinished self is both revealed and refined. The woman who enters a man's life is more than a companion or lover. She is a mirror, a guide, and often a gatekeeper to deeper layers of his psyche. Through her presence, the man confronts parts of himself long hidden, parts that resist and parts that yearn for transformation. The experience of relationship brings the man face to face with his own incompleteness. It exposes his wounds, his projections, his fears, and his shadows. The qualities he both admires and resents in the other are reflections of his own inner contradictions. She holds up the fragmented pieces of his identity, forcing him to confront what he has denied or disowned. This confrontation is painful and unsettling, but it is necessary for growth. It is the process by which the ego begins to dissolve its rigid boundaries, allowing the soul to emerge more fully. In this initiation, the woman becomes both beloved and teacher. She challenges his illusions, disrupts his patterns, and calls forth capacities he did not know he possessed: vulnerability, patience, empathy, and courage. The relationship is less about the satisfaction of desire and more about the awakening of consciousness. It is an alchemical union in which both are transformed, not merely through union itself, but through the trials that union brings. This sacred process requires surrender. Not surrender to another's will, but surrender to the movement of the psyche toward wholeness. The man learns that love is not possession but participation, not control but co-creation.